This is the CBS Evening News. Susan Spencer sitting in tonight for Bob Schieffer. Good evening. The dizzying pace of change in Eastern Europe grew more frenetic today as hundreds of thousands of East Germans took to the streets shouting for freedom, and thousands more fled across the Czech border, taking advantage of last night's surprise decision to open that border to the west. In East Berlin, as Alan Pizzi reports, the march was a direct challenge to the beleaguered communist government, and yet that government authorized it.
It was the first legal opposition demonstration ever held in East Germany. It was also the biggest political protest so far, up to 500,000 people on the march through the center of East Berlin, demanding press freedom and political reform. Opposition groups saw it as a natural progression of the changes that had been rolling across the country. As one unique poster put it, the wheel of history cannot be stopped. For the first time, foreign journalists were accredited to cover the anti-government protest, and the state-run TV covered some of the 5-hour rally live. The police had promised not to interfere, and marshals wearing sashes labeled "No Violence" lined the route. They needn't have worried. After 40 years of Communist Party control, people here don't seem to know how not to behave by the rules. The river of protesters even tried to stay on the right side of the road, although the entire city center was closed to traffic for the occasion. But organizers were still nervous.
We have no tradition of no culture of demonstration so far.
There is still fear of repression, but the demands for change have had some effect. Last night, East German leader Egon Krenz announced the removal of 5 party hardliners and promised more reform. But the people in the streets want more than that.
He has to do the reform quickly and really act, and not only talk.
The march went past the East German parliament, and among the messages aimed at it was a cryptic sign which read, "The people are leading, and the party is limping behind." Party representatives did their best to dispel that notion.
Things will develop, and we shall have some decisions in the further or in the nearer time.
But this was the reaction when he tried to sell it to the crowd. Opposition speakers at the rally called for an end to the Communist Party. The distinct impression here is that no one really seems sure where the reform movement is going.
The government hopes that legal demonstrations will act as a safety valve for its increasingly restive population. Opposition groups say it will be just the reverse, that each protest will increase the pressure for real change. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, East Berlin.
In a remarkable agreement last night, East Germany and Czechoslovakia decided to open another safety valve, agreeing to let East Germans emigrate freely to the West. Many were too astonished to believe it. Martha Teichner reports.
More than 4,000 people left Prague today in what is likely to be the last mass exodus from East Germany. The refugees who this week pressed to get into the West German embassy today pressed to get out, the result of last night's historic deal. It makes scenes like this unnecessary. There will be no more camps, no more exit visas, no more bureaucratic delays. Now refugees are free to leave any way they want, as long as they go through one of East Germany's neighbors like Czechoslovakia. All they need are their passports. The intention was to make the exodus invisible, so that from now on, the numbers can no longer be seen as a gauge of the East German government's unpopularity. Most of the East Germans who left Prague today knew nothing of the deal, or if they did, didn't trust it. Not always able to hold in their emotions, they waited to be taken to special trains, still worried that the door to freedom was about to close.
On Monday, you will shut the border, and so I must come to West Germany.
But the freedom trains were fact. As they prepared to leave, the refugees threw away their East German money, worthless in the West. One final symbolic slap at the government that is pleading with them to stay. They pulled away, finally allowing themselves to believe they were really going aboard what are likely to be the last of the freedom trains. But not the last trains to freedom. Martha Teichner, CBS News, Prague.
On the other side of the border in West Germany, the stream of arriving refugees continues non-stop. As Anthony Mason tells us from London, they are looking ahead to a new life. Few are looking back.
The some 800 East Germans aboard this special train may never have heard of the town of Marktredwitz, but this afternoon, that was where they were officially welcomed to West Germany. The path out from the east for these refugees was easier than for their predecessors. This time, their government just let them go. But for many, arrival in the West was overwhelming nonetheless.
People here in West Germany are so nice and so beautiful.
When the East German government surprisingly gave the go-ahead Friday night, many didn't bother to wait for the buses or trains. They headed straight for the border. In the early hours of this morning, the little East German Trabant cars began backing up at the crossing points. Czech border guards hardly glanced at their papers. And once across, the refugees were handed maps to find their way west. The Red Cross was already preparing for the new wave, wheeling a fleet of donated baby strollers into the train station and passing out food. For most of the refugees, Marktredwitz was only a transfer point to switch trains and travel on. The homeland these East Germans have left behind is now changing almost daily, but no one expressed any regrets. "You'd better get used to this exodus," said one refugee, "because it's not going to stop." Anthony Mason, CBS News, London.
Earlier today, I talked with Chief White House correspondent Leslie Stahl about the situation in the Eastern Bloc. Leslie, these incredible scenes from Eastern Europe continue day after day. We haven't heard much from the White House this week at all. What is the administration's view of this?
Well, you might think that they would see this as chaotic and the kind of uncontrolled situation that they were trying very hard to avoid, but officials say that they do not see this in any way as a crisis, that they say that this emigration to the West is what they've wanted all along. They even want East Germany to open up more. They say this is the kind of human rights issue they've been pushing for, and they say that West Germany is absorbing this flood without any problems, that a lot of these people, most of them are getting jobs, and so they don't see it as a crisis at all.
No crisis meetings, no sense of urgency in terms of more active American involvement.
Well, that's what they're telling me, despite the fact, Susan, that I hear that the West German government has been trying to get the Bush administration to talk about contingencies if the flood gets any larger than this. It's hard to see that it's not going to from what we saw tonight on the news.
And so what are the options?
Well, they're not looking at options. They say this is just fine. They don't see it as the kind of situation that demands any immediate American action.
But does it demand, is there discussion of a more public acknowledgement that something momentous here is happening?
Well, you know, their policy all along has been not to encourage what they call chaos, uncontrolled movements of people. They wanted a prudent evolution, and they feel that if George Bush begins to speak out, it could ignite something. What they're telling us as of now, that chaos has not been ignited.
Leslie Stahl at the White House. Still ahead on the CBS Evening News, the crisis that held America captive 10 years later. And Doug Tennell on the Golden Boys.
My great-grandfather Albert had some complicated ideas. Understanding this Einstein's theory of relativity just takes relatives. See, my new Rolls 88 Royale carries 6, plus front-wheel drive and 3800 engine for superb passing. It's perfect for today's nuclear family. You don't have to be an Einstein to figure that out.
Get up to a $1,000 cash bonus on a 1990 88 Royale. See your Rolls dealer today.
Ooh, honey, don't come near me, please.
Oh, I can't. No, it's not a good idea.
Oh, no, baby, you know, not right now.
Oh, sweetie. You don't want to get too close.
Fight morning breath with Scope. Scope has 2 powerful ingredients to kill 90% of the bacteria that cause morning breath.
Kiss me.
What are you waiting for?
Great kiss.
You may kiss me now.
Scope, the best thing first thing in the morning.
Sure, these new honey-made graham snacks are delicious and wholesome, but give us bees a break. Stop eating so many. What are you doing? You know how many bee hours go into one box? Put that down. You guys!
Honey-made honeycomb graham snacks.
Great news. I don't need surgery for my hemorrhoids. The doctor said they're not that serious. He said use Preparation H.
You can often relieve pain and itch for hours and help shrink swelling of inflamed hemorrhoidal tissues with Preparation H, ointment or suppositories.
Today marks the 10th anniversary of the takeover of the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, an anniversary that was expected to bring out huge crowds of Iranians. But that isn't what happened. Tom Fenton narrates our report from London.
The turnout in Tehran for the anniversary was relatively poor. Only 10 to 15,000 demonstrators joined the march past the former American embassy. Compared to rallies of previous years, which drew hundreds of thousands, this heavily advertised demonstration was a lifeless affair. Cheerleaders led the well-known chants of "Death to America," but most of the demonstrators looked as if they were going through the motions. The embassy grounds, still occupied by Iranian Revolutionary Guards, were open to the public for the occasion. There was a grotesque anti-American exhibit. It included wreckage of the Iranian Airbus shot down last year by an American warship. The display included plaster victims. The pièce de résistance was a so-called press conference featuring 7 Iranians accused of spying for the United States. All 7 said they'd been recruited by the CIA. President Rafsanjani, who's trying to improve Iran's relations with the rest of the world, did not attend today's rally. He met with Soviet officials to discuss economic aid. Despite efforts by Iranian hardliners to use this anniversary to stir up anti-American sentiment, the Iranian revolution is clearly running out of steam.
The state of the Iranian revolution is that it knows within its heart that it has been a failure. The great majority of Iranians are very, very sorry now for having got rid of the Shah, and they even haven't got the freedom to say it.
War and revolution have left a bitter legacy, hundreds of thousands of dead and wounded, and a ruined economy. Iranians estimate the eventual cost of rebuilding their country will be $400 billion. Despite 10 years of official anti-American propaganda, many Iranians now believe the seizure of the embassy was a mistake, and they privately hope their country will renew relations with the United States. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
At Arlington National Cemetery today, there was a ceremony to honor the American servicemen killed in the attempt to rescue the Iran hostages. 3 of those former hostages took part in the tribute, which was organized by the group that sponsored the Yellow Ribbon campaign during the hostage crisis. It's hard to imagine today, but the U.S. and Iran had been friends for decades before the hostage crisis. From both the American and the Iranian side, though, that one event changed everything.
The relations between the United States and Iran over the past 10 years could scarcely have been any worse.
The revolution effectively ended the American presence in Iran. The taking of hostages ended diplomatic relations. Tensions grew with the Iran-Iraq war, with the U.S. military buildup in the Persian Gulf, Iran's involvement in hijacking and terrorism, and the accidental downing of an Iranian Airbus by American missiles.
The issue of Iran-U.S. relations is a political bombshell in both countries. Neither one wants to take the first step and risk the possible fallout from doing so.
Other analysts say the climate for that first step has improved since the death of the Ayatollah and the retirement of his arch enemy, Ronald Reagan.
You had a sort of explosive mixture in some respects. 2 highly ideological, highly charismatic individuals. Both Bush and Rafsanjani are much less ideological. And it seems to me both of them are more interested in sort of pragmatic, step-by-step progress.
It's much too early to talk about normalization of relationships, and I don't think we can even think in those terms as long as the hostages are held in the Middle East.
Different hostages today, the Americans in Lebanon, their captors believed backed by Iran. In the administration's view, this is the biggest stumbling block to seizing the initiative. Rafsanjani is paralyzed by different forces, chiefly by radicals in his own administration.
For them, Khomeini broke with the United States. That is sacred. If anyone reverses it, he's a traitor. And Rafsanjani isn't going to take those political risks.
But Rafsanjani's Iran does have powerful incentives to improve ties with the West. The Iran-Iraq war devastated his country's economy.
The Iranians would like to have access to foreign credits and foreign technology, but I don't think that they're going to have great difficulty securing that in Europe and in Japan.
The Iranian embassy in Washington sits empty. Some messages do go through intermediaries, but there is no sign of any continuous dialogue. Iran still has oil. Iran still sits in a strategic spot in the Middle East and may someday once again be our friend. But 10 years later, the emphasis is on someday.
What's wrong, Doug?
Mr. Khayyam, I hate shaving.
You're using the wrong equipment. Try this Remington microscreen. The microscreen shaves as close as the blade, or your money back. It has two thin, flexible screens. The first shaves incredibly close, the second even closer. And with this convenient charger stand, it's always ready to shave.
Smooth. Now I know why you bought the company.
The Remington microscreen shaves as close as the blade, or your money back. No other shaver makes that promise.
Never guess what we're baking for breakfast. It's made with whole oats, plus raisins, nuts, and spices. It's a cereal. New Oat Bake, a nutritious new oat cereal from Kellogg's. It's the only whole oat cereal that's baked, for a rich taste you won't find in any other oat cereal. New Kellogg's Oat Bake, the whole oat cereal with the crunchy baked taste.
A cozy sweater, an old friend, and a tasty snack make a walk really special, particularly when the snack's fresh, moist, sun-sweet pitted prunes. Let taste be your guide, and you'll discover only one prune tastes sun-sweet.
When Mom gets a cough and cold, everyone suffers.
Mom, Dad's ironing.
Time to doctor that cough with Robitussin.
Look, Mom's feeling better.
Robitussin, recommended by more doctors, pharmacists, and Dr. Mom.
On the eve of a mayoral election in which a major issue is illegal drugs, authorities here in New York have discovered tons of the stuff smuggled up from Colombia. What they didn't find was the dealers. Jacqueline Adams reports.
It may turn out to be the largest and most hazardous drug bust in New York history. Last night, federal agents seized at least 5 tons of cocaine in a Queens warehouse. No one was arrested, but police were forced to wear protective clothing because the drugs had been packed under 6 inches of sodium hydroxide, better known as caustic lye.
This is a highly corrosive item. It must be handled in a very, very unique way.
And the effect on the cocaine?
There's always the possibility of some sort of actually severe contamination of the cocaine itself.
Agents know the cocaine was shipped to Philadelphia, then trucked to New York, all part of a massive smuggling operation tied to Colombia's Cali cartel. The drugs, they say, bore the same markings as 21 tons of cocaine seized in Los Angeles in September, a bust called the largest in the world.
While Colombia's drug war did slow cocaine shipments into the United States in its first few weeks this summer, federal agents here in New York say they've seen no impact whatsoever.
We seized 37 tons in October, and this may be another 5 tons. I am saying right now in New York, we have not seen any shortage of cocaine and have not seen any change in price.
Emergency services officers are working overtime tonight to clear both the drugs and the lye out of the warehouse. Tomorrow morning, 23,000 athletes are scheduled to run right past it during the New York City Marathon. Jacqueline Adams, CBS News, New York.
Another Colombian under indictment for cocaine smuggling was extradited to this country today. Guillermo Juan Bueno Delgado is the 6th Colombian brought to the United States to face charges since August, when Colombia launched a new war on drugs. A small earthquake rocked the San Francisco Bay Area overnight. It was centered southwest of Oakland. It registered 3.6 on the Richter scale. Buildings swayed and subway service was halted for a while, but there were no reports of injuries or damage. And technically, it was not even an aftershock of the huge October quake. That one occurred along the San Andreas Fault, this one on the Hayward Fault. It's been nearly 2 weeks now since 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling was kidnapped at gunpoint in St. Joseph, Minnesota. Today, the boy's neighbors, thousands of them, showed their support for him by forming a human chain, and the local Lions Club announced a $100,000 reward for Jacob's safe return.
It's 22 degrees, and Andy Cabana's father has let him all about his antifreeze.
Come on, Dad, where are you?
The hard way. Don't push your luck. Guarantee it with Advanced Formula Prestone.
Sure, these new honey-made graham snacks are delicious and wholesome, but give us bees a break. Stop eating so many. What are you doing? You know how many bee hours go into one box? Put that down. You guys!
Honey-made honeycomb graham snacks.
You are about to see the most important words in pain relief in 100 years. Motrin IB. No prescription needed. The doctor-recommended pain reliever in Motrin is now available in non-prescription strength Motrin IB. One Motrin IB is as effective as 2 regular aspirin for relief of headache and muscle ache, and much gentler on your stomach. New Motrin IB, tablets or caplets. Doctor-recommended pain relief.
Freedent's the one. If you've got dental work, you've got 3 great reasons to chew Freedent. You know, Freedent won't stick to your dental work, and Freedent keeps your breath fresh. But maybe you didn't know Freedent moistens your mouth, too. So if you hate a dry mouth like I do, chew Freedent.
Freedent's the one that took the stick out of gum, and Freedent moistens your mouth. Yeah, moistens your mouth, and freshens your breath while you chew.
Non-stick Freedent moistens your mouth and freshens your breath.
This is the last weekend of campaigning for state and local elections, many featuring black candidates. In a sign of changing times, what is new this year is not that black candidates are running, but how they're running. CBS News chief political correspondent Bruce Morton reports.
Coleman Young, 71-year-old lion of Detroit politics, roaring.
Let us go home and get some rest and come back refreshed and kick some ass together.
Young is seeking a 5th term as mayor of this battered city. The polls say he'll get it.
I think Coleman Young is the last of a particular breed. He represents the old guard.
Young, like Maynard Jackson in Atlanta, is a veteran of civil rights fights, elected by black votes in a black city, no need of white support. But a lot of blacks this year are running very different campaigns. In Cleveland, City Council President George Forbes is the old-style candidate, but he trails State Senator Michael White, who is running against forced busing and for more policemen.
We've heard a lot of talk about guns and dogs and tanks and helicopters. What we need are more police.
The interesting and, to some extent, new development here is the black candidate who is looking mostly for white votes in a white constituency.
Whites and blacks are fairly evenly divided in Cleveland, but look at Seattle, about 10% black, where black city councilor Norman Rice is running against white city attorney Doug Jewett. Both men campaigned today in what is a close election. Some polls show Rice ahead. Or New Haven, Connecticut, about 30% black, where black Democrat John Daniels is expected to win. These men are running mainstream campaigns.
They're not running as a civil rights campaign. They're not running for the Civil Rights Hall of Fame. They're running to be mayor of a city, to govern, to deliver services.
Same thing in New York, about 25% black. Democrat David Dinkins, who collected a slew of endorsements today, is running as Mr. Middle of the Road. His Republican opponent, Rudolph Giuliani, is trying to say Dinkins is another Jesse Jackson. But polls show Giuliani trailing in very Democratic New York. And finally, Democrat Doug Wilder is running for governor of Virginia the same way as the moderate who will continue growth and prosperity. He'd be the first black ever elected governor of a state. Polls show him leading Republican Marshall Coleman in spite of a presidential visit. A lot of blacks are courting white and black voters this fall, and a number of them are expected to win. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Washington.
To which this nation has always been committed. Extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. Peace now, peace now, peace.
We're not going to try to control what our people read and say and think.
You commit yourself to the principles of God. Free at last. Free at last!
The freedom to say and think what we believe.
to express our individuality and diversity. That's our birthright, and it's ensured by this document. Join us and the National Archives in celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights.
Special K. Lose the fat.
You only go around once, they say. That may apply to life in general. It does not apply to life in baseball, where, as Doug Tennell reports, you can keep going around for as long as you can hit the ball.
It's one of baseball's classic confrontations. On the mound, Vida Blue. In the dugout, manager Earl Weaver. On base, Campy Campaneris. But this is no Field of Dreams or videotape out of a Major League archive. This is the Senior Professional Baseball Association, the league where everyone has to be at least 30-something in order to suit up. 8 brand new teams, all based in the spring training cities of Florida, opened a 72-game season this week. There are some great old names and some names you never heard of.
Some people have called it the Liniment League. It is the latest attempt by sports entrepreneurs to cash in on the stars of the past. And why not? They've been doing it in other sports for years.
If there is one thing everyone in baseball's senior league agrees on, it is that players in their 30s are by no means past their prime. Witness Paul Blair, once the pride of the Baltimore Orioles.
I'm 45, and that's not too old either.
A little gray hair, a little gray hair.
I got a little gray hair here. I get a little sore after the games, but I come back the next day.
Pitcher Louis Tiant, an ageless wonder for the Boston Red Sox, says he's now 48.
How old are you?
I'm 54, and I feel like 20.
But with the cost of a senior league franchise running just under $2 million a year, and so many players still trying to lose a few pounds with rubber shirts and weighted mallets, even some club owners admit they're not sure whether this league will ever get beyond first base.
From a businessman's point of view, it's not the most favorable thing you could ever do.
For owners, there's a risk of not drawing at least 2,500 fans per game in order to break even. For players, there's a $15,000 a month salary cap, and there is a very real risk of injury, or perhaps worse, embarrassment. So why do it?
Well, here's a chance once again for these guys to say, hey, I can be a kid again. I never wanted to grow up in the first place, so let's go give it a try.
It is a chance for the boys of summer to go into extra innings. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Fort Myers, Florida.
Right on. That's the CBS Evening News. Connie Chung will be here tomorrow, and later on tonight, Connie will profile New York's most dangerous prison inmate on Saturday night with Connie Chung. And of course, Charles Kuralt will be along first thing Sunday morning. I'm Susan Spencer. Have a nice evening.
This is CBS.
Next on 11 News.